Yeah, I heard it beep, so it's warm enough.
Excellent. Well, let me just start off by saying it's hard to follow a top 10 list. And we had a meeting last night, and we lost a couple at the last minute, and I'm not sure if it's the hangover effect of the elections or trying to figure out what to do. So really excited to be here and talk about something that we started about a little over a year ago at Highland. We moved to Gilbert in 2007 as a family, lived in the Midwest for about 10 years, lived in South America for 4 years, and moved here from South America, and had a little different perspective on how high schools work, coming from a relatively small district in South America that was very integrated, very collaborative, very inclusive, very supportive, one sport to another, and across the board, and the parents were all very involved. And the philosophy was, if your son or daughter left school at the end of the last bell, they've only gotten half of their education. And the real push was to keep the students engaged in extracurricular activities and have an inclusive environment that allows people to be successful. So one of the things is I have 6 children. I now have them from preschool to college, so we have every kind of group covered. And I make a joke with our principal, and I say, I told him that we will be friends for the next 14 years, because I'll have somebody at Highland for 14 more years. And I think it's finally sunk in that he's realized that we're not going to go away. Although he, sometimes it's a love-hate relationship with some of my persistence. So what this became was an opportunity for the booster clubs to work together and really push for success in all areas. We have girls softball that has a relatively small group, ROTC, to band and football that are kind of the 500-pound gorillas. But everybody gets, they get a lot of attention. And we wanted to talk about how we can, as Highland, can do better and how everyone can succeed. So I'll just walk you through the path. The plan today really is to walk us through what is it, the Highland mission, and what our mission is. And we're not a parent group. We're really, it's a forum, as I call it. It's a loose knit without bylaws, but we meet 3 times a year. And we have some things that we're trying to get accomplished. And so we'll talk a little bit about those. We'll talk about some of our current projects, and we'll just talk a little bit about you. As an elementary school parent, what does this mean to you? You will eventually graduate to high school, and depending on what happens when your child is in high school or you're there, how you can get engaged. Because it's very different. From being a school-wide function, you arrive at the high school, and the question that was asked to me is, what is he involved with? And I said, well, he plays football, he runs track, he's in student council, and he's in the band. So you have to pick which one of those you want to associate with. And I said, well, that's not really going to work for us, because I've got a daughter 2 years that's now in orchestra, and she's in basketball, so different sports. And so a little different dynamic once you get to the high school ranks is either very specific, but also how you have the broader reach. And for us, and for me, this was a good way to get involved with a lot of different areas. So we'll walk through this little journey. So first of all, this was part of the problem statement in talking with the boosters, the administration, to say, okay, first of all, who are we as Highland? And this is kind of a little bit of sales on Highland, but basically I said, what is a hawk, or the Highland hawk? And the reality is, it gave the description of what it is, and great. Basically, it's a species of birds that are very diverse, 250 different species of birds. And I likened that because each student in each group is very different, but we are one family, and trying to drive them to take the leap of faith from me focusing on band and only band, and how can band succeed, to the overall Highland experience for the students. Because band and football, band and orchestra, they all overlap, and the success of one is the success of all. So we're one family, and we're going to succeed. And I didn't put on here fail, but potentially fail together as well. If cross-country isn't doing well and the booster club is struggling, the students who are there are having a very different experience than those who aren't. So let's talk a little bit about Highland's mission. And I just focused on 2 things. Number one is the well-rounded educational opportunity. It doesn't mean within the 4 walls of the school. It's out on the track. It's the interaction that they have as they're talking with businesses, and also create a positive learning environment. And for me, this means inclusivity, and it means encouragement. And that can mean different things. So let's talk a little bit about what we are. So we're an organization, and we're called Extreme, Cross, whatever it is, right? The goal is taking a diverse group and bringing them for one goal. to establish and provide a forum for the booster clubs to support each other. Every year we have elections and we have turnover. How do we get some synergies? The goal will be accomplished through cooperation and communications with the club's community at large and faculty and administration. All booster presidents are invited. Some participate, some send delegates. Some are there religiously and engage actively. Some are there passively, just want to kind of take it in and kind of see what it's all about. What are our 3 goals? We have 3 goals, and each one of those has 5 or 6 sub-goals. But the first goal is to increase school spirit and tradition, to create some experiences for the students. The second is maintain the Highland excellence through continuous improvement. And that's a little bit challenging because that can mean criticism for the administration, which is where we don't want it to be. It's not about criticism, it's about positive reinforcement and encouragement to get better. And sometimes you have to look at what you're doing poorly, but you don't want to ignore the things you're doing well. And this is something that I learned early on, is when you get feedback and you focus only on the things you do poorly, you lose the traction of what got you to where you are today. And you need to continue to focus on that as well. And then the last is really the synergies, and this could be the first or the last, depending on how you look at it. This is kind of the meat and potatoes. What's in it for me as the cross-country booster or the track? How can I benefit from coming to a couple of meetings? So let's talk about each of these goals. First is to increase school spirit. One of the things that we've learned is that everybody has memories of their high school experiences, and they're different than what the students are having today. But the common thread is there are events that take place in a school year that students will remember for the rest of their life, good or bad. And how can we create some traditions at Highland that will give them positive experiences? How do we have supportive and a helpful environment for all of the booster clubs so that the boosters aren't struggling? Softball has about a $500 revenue stream from their concessions, and the moms carry out the coolers and they set it down. Football has about a $2,000, $2,500 a night revenue stream for concessions. That's not the biggest revenue stream, but they're different environments, and the students feel different levels of support and love because they're kind of the redheaded stepchild who's way out in the field who doesn't have a concession stand. And how can we help them with that? Expand participation in clubs and sports and organizations through an inclusive environment. Provide opportunities for every desiring student. There are sports that we can't allow every student who wants to participate in. There are cut sports, non-cut sports. There are clubs. Create an environment where there is something for everyone. So if they try out for soccer and get cut, what else can they engage with until the track starts? Or what else can they get involved with? And ensure that the parents also aren't creating an exclusive clique in the clubs, in the booster clubs, that it's an inclusive organization as well. Next is strengthening traditions and the alumni involvement. Something that GPS is working on through the GPS alumni website, but really trying to create experiences that people will have a lifelong link to Highland and strengthen those. And Highland has been around for 20 years. The traditions are still at the infancy stage. When you think about a Mesa High or some of the local schools that have been around forever, those are very different than what we have at Highland. And we want to start creating those so that as students graduate, they want to come back for homecoming and they want to be part of Highland. And for us, it's a future revenue stream for sponsorship and scholarships. Next is maintaining the excellence through continuous improvement. Simply, we want the best families and the best staff. That's it. So, and we want to do that because it's a great place to work and it's a great place for families to move into. How do you do that? That's really a little more challenging, and we'll talk a little bit about some of our initiatives on service projects, service opportunities, ways to improve the school, way to make it more inviting for families. Next is leveraging the booster synergies. Every dollar that you spend as a booster club and every hour that's contributed, we want the most return for that. So as we're talking about concessions, the concession stand, we've got one group that may be buying better than another group. So it's the same amount of effort, one's getting a 30% return, one's getting a 40% return. And we want the profit, so we want the top line revenues to increase for concessions, we want the bottom line profits to increase. Same thing on any fundraisers, when we're talking about that, we want to make sure that we're maximizing the return. The second is thinking beyond yourself, thinking about Highland in total. Discussion I had this morning was around playoff football games and concessions and ROTC. ROTC is at every football game. ROTC has a very small group. They struggle from fundraising. How do we engage them in some of the the football fundraisers to allow them to have some of the benefit? They're supporting the football team, but they're not seeing some of the benefits of that. So it's really thinking beyond yourself and thinking beyond just the four walls of Highland. So what are our current projects? So first on Spirit Traditions, we're really focused in working with Student Council on homecoming and how do we increase that experience and heighten that for the existing students, but also try to throw some lines out for some of the alumni to come back. Next is open house and freshman night. This is an opportunity for us to engage the families that are already enrolled or those incoming freshmen to let them know there are 15 very active booster clubs at Highland High School. And beyond that, there are many other opportunities that you can engage with that may not have a formal booster club, but to enhance your education at Highland. Second is when we talk about excellence and continuous improvement, and this is really on the infancy stage, there are a number of Eagle projects that happen every year at every school. And not that we want to control how those are organized, but there are church groups, there are volunteer organizations that want to do things, and if we can provide those opportunities at Highland, whether it's the cleaning up parking lot, painting curbs, there are things that students do at Highland, and we want to encourage more of those. Oftentimes we react. When somebody comes and says, do you have an Eagle project? We have a list of Eagle projects, but we don't go out and solicit Eagle projects to come to Highland so that we can gain some of the benefit. An Eagle project has generally between 50 and 100 hours of service that are provided, and those can go to your schools, and I'm sure many of the schools have benefited from it. But think about how you can, instead of reacting to people offering, solicit those in the community, and the church groups, and the other things around that will help enhance. And that's one of the things we want to try to work through. On the infancy stage, we're still working with the administration to create those prioritized lists, but it's something that's on our to-do list. The last is synergies. Spirit items. So our last meeting, we talked about the things that are on the table. We talked about shirts, things. At the high school level, it's everyone the coolness factor. Who's a booster president, so that they can communicate. This was last night's meeting here. Same look. You see the little umbrella. That's the concession cart we're trying to work with the girls softball on, to work with student council and some of the groups that may be able to use a concession cart, and how they can benefit. So what does this mean to you? Really just broke it down into 5 points. First thing is figure out how to get started and how you can expand the reach of your club or your organization at the high school level. Second is lead by example. It's a challenge to serve another club, to commit your resources to benefit another organization. And the boards oftentimes resist it because they don't all have the same vision. They're just worried about their organization. It started at Highland by football offering 2 barbecue grills that were almost brand new to the band for one of their events. And that started the momentum. The band saw that this isn't just about me, that they're willing to actually contribute resources. Think outside your club, big picture. Really think about how you can improve the overall experience beyond just where you are today. Share, enable, and encourage, and don't give up. One of the things that we've learned is change is hard, and it's slow, and it takes time. And we'll get there. We've been at this a little over a year, and we expect to continue to make progress. We're excited about Highland in the fact that we're starting to see progress. We still have some roadblocks. I'll be honest with you. There are still groups that are hesitant. They're waiting. It's still in the wait and see even after a year. But I think we, from an administration standpoint, have great alignment. From many of the booster clubs, we've got great alignment, and we're starting to see some terrific things. So